What happened to subcultures? Cause this is not Goth.
Oh my god, are you guys Goth House?
With not one but 2 degrees with honors in philosophy and international studies, today we're gonna actually see why subcultures don't exist anymore. First of all, subcultures used to be the combination of 2 things. 1. Style and ideas that were conveyed through culture and music and appearance. Now, these days, we don't have any forums anymore, but forums used to be heart of subcultures in the 2000s. Yes, of course, there were subcultures also way before the 2000s, but in a sense, forums were the last glimpse of it, because in forums, you weren't there for your appearance, but you were there for your ideas. Your presence was not based on your look, as it is now on TikTok or Instagram, but it was based on what you were saying. That's because the only images you had was maybe a profile picture or also a banner, and if you were super fancy, a GIF. Now, was this culture? Well, not everybody had the philosophical thickness of Hegel or Rousseau, but at the same time, yes, we can say that there was a little bit of culture. So, part 1, let's see what were the subcultures that got lost in history. So, in the 60s, we had hippies. Hippies actualized the counter-cultural revolution. It was against the dogmas of society, and that society was the society of their parents. That was directly fabricated by the horrors of 2 world wars and one major market crash. That was the counterculture. But then we got the origin of subcultures. In the 70s were mainly made by punks, and punks were the radicals who opposed to control the government, the monarchy, and rejected corporate greed and social rules. Hence, the DIYification of whatever you needed. Also because probably you were poor if you were a punk. Between the 70s and 80s, there was this new genre, there was the post-punk music genre, I'm speaking. So, for instance, think of The Cure, which, fantastic. But yes, they were the first, second leg of subculture, because it was a goth movement. Now, the very big difference between punk and goth is that more or less goth was more based upon the aesthetic rather than on the political stance, where punks were very, very, very political, and the two basically clashed a lot. Yeah. But at the same time, goth also in the 70s and 80s, they had some values. Their values were based on the refusal of traditional standards of sexual property, and also welcomed religious freedoms and gender egalitarianism. So, looking at this type of TikToks, I mean, what the fluff is this? Where is the sexual revolution? Where is the sexual egalitarianism? Now, they all opposed to what? To the mainstream. The mainstream that had this type of traditional values, the family, the gender roles, and also to the extreme, there was another culture or subculture. There was that of the yuppies. The yuppies were the opposite of hippies. If you want an example, you can think of the extreme, that is the Wolf of Wall Street. What was betrayed there was on point. In the 90s, there was this basic clash, and the clash wasn't anymore with goths or punks, but it was with grunge. Indeed, 90s grunge was openly against corporate greed, materialism, and consumism. And style-wise, it was against the 1980s glam rock excess. Everything against corporate greed, then just to become the best-selling t-shirt at H&M. Getting back to the main topic, it is a fact that nowadays we don't see many people being super committed to an alternative style. Yeah, we just don't do it as much as we used to. But this has caught the attention of many scholars, not just you and I. Well, The first easy answer to this is just this. Quoting. The decades of subcultural fragmentation and proliferation, with a glut of revivals, hybrids, and transformations, and the coexistence of a myriad styles at any one point in time. So basically the thing is that too many things are existing at the same time altogether, and so they lose power. But my question is, how did we go from cultures to subcultures to post-subcultures? And what's after subcultures? Not culture? In the digital era, we started witnessing the massification of alternative lifestyles. Concerts had a massive audience. People could finally gather in larger communities that existed both offline and online on platforms like Forum Free and, oh my gosh, Netlog. This is what scholars refer to as post-subculture. As usual, new waves were always heavily criticized. Punks hated goths, goths hated new goths, new goths hated mall goths. But stuff that happened was that basically they were united for the hate of emos. I mean, what was different? The general sentiment was that the emos were fake, or at least that everything that was new was not original, so it was an imitation, so it was fake, I don't know. The emos were believed to not having the same degree of culture behind them. It was seen as a very different type of thing, not really being part of a culture. Now, I don't actually agree with that, but we'll get to that in a second. I mean, I definitely agree that it was much harder for a punk in the 70s to go and rebel against their own parents or the society, because the society was super stiff and rigid. And then in the 2000s, everything had been already done. And so, yes, it's true, the emos weren't facing the same generational gap. But I wouldn't really say that they lacked community. Indeed, they definitely were a community, so I wouldn't say that that completely lost any type of culture. Now, maybe it wasn't as deep as the anti-monarchs or anarchists in the 70s, and they were, yes, punks and goths and whatever, but yes, they weren't fighting against the British crown. But still, they had something to share. There were people gathering all together and coming together because of what they liked. We could still say that it was a real-life community based upon what you were listening to. I mean, mall goths listened to bands like Korn, Slipknot, and industrial metal like Rammstein and Marilyn Manson. Emos definitely had My Chemical Romance and also maybe Tokyo Hotel, I don't know, you will tell me, but whatever, they definitely had Green Day. So, coming back to the online fact of it, your online presence was just made to support and ameliorate your presence offline, which was also called the real life. Now, metalheads, emos, mall goths, and other kinds of people all gathered on forums, exchanging musical suggestions, ranking songs, and even organizing real gatherings at gigs. You remember? Gigs, where people used to enjoy music and not pay a knee and a leg just to go there. Now, dressing in a certain fashion basically signaled to others that you belonged to a certain type of community, that you liked a certain type of music, and that you had probably a certain lifestyle. So it was useful. I mean, you had to get around and go out in the wild and make friends, and that was a fantastic way to show your identity. In a certain way, was that you were actually displaying a part of you. So it was made not to be liked online, but to actually function offline, to create real, organic friendships. That's why your culture and our culture used to be offline. What I can see now is that this type of attire has been heavily sexualized. Why? Because it makes money, because it speaks to some fantasies, and because now you can go and buy some chokers from Timo and pretend that you are somehow alternative while you do and believe nothing that is alternative. There is not of a creation, but you are just consuming an identity because you're not using it for any type of creation. You are just trying to get as much as you can from social media. A question, what are we speaking about here? I mean, the complete idea of going against capitalism, gone. Sexual and gender egalitarianism, gone, because that's completely against the original purpose of this type of subcultures. That, in other words, went away for the sakes of likes and the price of an H&M shirt. Welcome to Why Should I Care About It? Because youth identities were expressed in subcultures, but youth identities are basically social identities. And the fact that these subcultures and that youth identities don't really exist anymore, and there is not as much as generational gap, well, that is worrying, because that is a signal of a general crisis in societal identity. It is a lack of collective awareness. Indeed, theorists care about it a lot. Theorists declared that during the 1990s and the early 2000s, we have witnessed an increasing flow of cultural commodities. Indeed, we had more images, more text, and more audios that through which fans could actually embark in a more individualized identity project. It was a notion of self that became more reflexive, but also fragmented. So as soon as identities could be sold in a mall, subcultures started to decline. Indeed, prior to that, subcultures heavily depended on the class that you belong to. I mean, it was impossible to be a UP in the 90s if you weren't rich. And it was easier to become a punk in Thatcher's England because, hey, you were poor and probably against the government. Easy. So, structural inequalities absolutely shaped young identities. According to a 2011 study, there are two very important definitions that we should all care about, because it's a definition between what's a lifestyle and a way of life. Indeed, a lifestyle is, in a sense, more superficial, because it is a creative project that is displayed in a community unified by the lifestyle itself, while the ways of life are typically associated with a more or less stable community and displayed in features such as shared norms, rituals, patterns, or social order, and probably a distinctive dialect. In other words, being punk was a way of life. Being emo was a lifestyle. So what changed? I mean, the first thing was the lack of the actual scene. After 2008, concerts became super expensive, increasingly, but the world was going through a crisis, an economic crisis, and at the same time, we got poorer time and time. And that made just one thing. It made concerts more exclusive, and it diminished the actual real-life occasions for people to gather and display their identity, to actually make new friends. I mean, in a sense, where were you supposed to go? But okay, so in 2008 we still had forums, so some events could be done in another way. But as concerts became an activity for rich people, yes, there was a first decline. In addition to this, rock music was also seeing a decline in mainstream media. That is because even if it was a subculture, it was always generating millions of dollars, if not billions. I mean, rock music used to be extremely televised, but when we approached to the rise of EDM, rap, and R&B, rock music was less and less televised. This even led to people thinking that there was a conspiracy theory against rock. Why is it unpopular? 2. The second major thing was the rise of social media. Indeed, social media is highly individualized, but not personalized. What I'm saying is that there is a lacking sense of community that was still present in former forums. it is now you versus your fans, or an ocean of faceless people that don't make up for just one real friend. It is super different to be on a forum where you actually know those people and chat with people that you know and even meet, as it was back then when forum free and forum community was part of your common daily experience. What does it mean that it's individualized but not personalized? It is not personalized because it kind of isolates you, but it is not personalized because it is just rewarding people who do the same aesthetics. And that is because it is solely based upon a mathematical thing that rewards you for a certain appearance that has to be regular, that has to be normally pleasing, and in general, it has to be inspirational. But what is the problem of this? Social media made us homologated in our desires. Indeed, we are all trying to get rich, and we are all trying to get luxurious lifestyle that can be quiet luxury or bold luxury. But at the end of the day, it's still luxury. And may I tell you, goths and punks didn't give a fluff about luxury. Staying online in an endless supply of cheap dopamine is the guilty pleasure of our decade. Oh, yes, I know, and I'm guilty of that. But the algorithm is not a scene, and it's not a community. It's just an algorithm. I mean, there is a difference between crafting something with your friends and doing it by yourself alone in your room and absolutely not having somebody to show it off. I mean, even if you are putting it online, it's definitely not the same impact, not on you and not on your growth. I mean, nobody gets shocked anymore online. And rebellion and shock was basically the whole intent of having a subculture. Yes, rebellion was the only constant thing that gathered all the subcultures together. But what are you rebelling against? Where is the difference between you and your parents if both of you are just trying to get clout online? I mean, where is the generational gap? Kurt Cobain always said that the fact that there is a real generational gap, it means that the world is going towards something. Generational gap is good. It has to be there. Otherwise, there is no progression. The whole point is that your mom can buy you a gothic dress, but it cannot actually buy you ideals. Is it a problem with wars going on, economic crisis, and general political instabilities? Okay, no, maybe it's not the first problem of the world right now, but the general decline of communities and their culture is a very big and important theme. Nowadays, there is something that the UN, yes, the UN, has called a crisis of sociability. Now, the problem is that socialization is a fundamental need that is often neglected. Some important questions for all of us. First, whose attention is she or he trying to attract? And why is she or he using social media to impress their own friends? Why do we all dress the same, and why are subcultures disappearing? Once upon a time, social media wasn't a thing and smartphones didn't exist. So we had to physically go and get some real life connections, to find some real like-minded people, and dressing in a certain way or a certain attire was a fantastic and useful way to do so. Yes, because dressing goth was to be a part of goths. Dressing as an emo was to signal that you were one. Everybody was just looking for human connections. Yes, just because socialization is a fundamental need. But the whole point of this was to make connections in real life, which actually meant offline. Now, real life is not a synonym of offline. Indeed, the real life is the addition of two things: your online presence and your offline life. Now,
What's different from before is that we actually use now social media to narrate our daily life, and parasocial relationships with influencers are completely normalized. I mean, how many of us regularly spend our lunch breaks with a YouTuber?
We used to create our identities by creating an outfit or curating our CD collection. Now CDs are useless because we have no device to play them. And all the music that ever existed is already online and there for you to listen to it. Now we don't create identities anymore, but we tend to buy them and to consume them. Indeed, we buy them through expensive concert tickets, through gadgets, to t-shirts. But these things are all expenses and they are things that we consume and are unable to recreate. Coming to the last and very last conclusions. Cost and the speed of life have turned recreation into an expense instead of a collective act of creation, creating friendships, creating memories, creating something together. And this is why subcultures are going away. This is Currents by Lisa, and every day, not every day, no, you have a video every Tuesday.